In a city where time seems to whisper forgotten secrets, Clara, a young architect fascinated by ancient memories, spends her days restoring long-abandoned buildings. While wandering through the city, she discovers an old diary in a century-old building about to be demolished. The pages, marked by time and history, belong to a man named Theo, who seems to have lived decades before her. But instead of just words about his past, Theo leaves messages as if he expected someone, someday, to find them and respond. Theo, on the other hand, lives in 1950 and never imagined that his thoughts would be read years in the future. He is a dreamy and mysterious young man who records recurring visions in his diary, always featuring the figure of a woman he feels he knows but has never met. These vivid and unsettling dreams compel him to write, unaware that his words are being read by Clara, a woman from a time he cannot comprehend. When Clara reads Theo's words, she feels an inexplicable connection, as if he were speaking directly to her. Her life begins to intertwine with the words of the past, and the diary becomes more than just a simple find. It becomes a portal, a temporal enigma where two lives, in distant times, embark on a journey of impossible encounters. Clara begins to lose herself in the pages of Theo's diary, each excerpt awakening a deep sense of familiarity within her. It's as if she can see his world through his descriptions. The yellowing sky at sunset from a distant era, the cobblestone streets, the scent of flowers he describes with almost poetic detail. Gradually, she starts to have strange dreams where she finds herself walking those very streets, in a time that feels both distant and incredibly close. Meanwhile, Theo, still in the 1950s, begins to notice something peculiar. The visions of the woman in his dreams intensify. He sees her vaguely, like a shadow, but it is enough for him to know she is not a figment of his imagination. He describes in his diary his confusion and doubts, trying to understand why that presence awakens in him a desire to connect, as if that strange woman were a missing piece of his life. These lines, filled with emotion, reach Clara, who reads them with a racing heart. She feels, inexplicably, that the words were written for her. But how could that be possible? One day, upon returning to the old building where she found the diary, Clara senses something different. As if, at some lost point in time, someone is also there, waiting for her. She begins to look at the world around her with new eyes, observing every detail, searching for signs of Theo. Unbeknownst to her, in his time, Theo does the same, always with an inexplicable hope, even without understanding why. For Clara and Theo, each day becomes a silent search, a waiting for someone who, until then, existed only in memory. A memory that will not fade until they finally meet. Weeks pass, and Clara begins to find strange objects in places she frequents. Small signs that seem to have come from a distant time. An old pen appears on her work desk without explanation. In a cafe she visits, she finds a worn coin with the year 1950 engraved on it. These seemingly insignificant signs leave her unsettled, as she feels they are connected to Theo from the diary. One afternoon, while she is in the same abandoned building where she found the diary, Clara encounters another surprise. A yellowed note, folded between the cracks of a wall. Her hands tremble as she opens it, and the handwriting is unmistakable. It's the same she read in the diary. To whoever reads this, know that I am here, waiting to meet you, no matter the time or distance. Clara feels her heart race. Each word seems like a call, an invitation to respond to someone who crosses decades to communicate with her. But how could he know that someone would find these messages? On the other side of time, in 1950, Theo also begins to notice signs that confuse him. He finds a dried flower on his desk that was never there before. In a park where he often walks, he sees a freshly carved inscription on a bench, Clara, followed by the current date from her time. Not understanding its meaning, he approaches, runs his fingers over the inscription, and feels a shiver down his spine. As Clara and Theo try to process these signs, what was once an emotional connection transforms into a true quest. Both leave small traces in their respective times, hoping the other will notice. Clara writes her own name in places she feels Theo might visit. He responds by drawing symbols that she interprets throughout her days. Amid their daily routines, each perceives these signs as reminders that an invisible force is uniting them, a thread of time connecting them in ways that defy any logic. This silent exchange begins to solidify a certainty for both. Someone, somewhere, is trying to communicate across time. And now, Clara and Theo are determined to follow the signs, waiting for the moment when their realities might finally meet. Time passes, and the exchange of signs between Clara and Theo intensifies, becoming a routine, a silent dance that only they understand. Clara now writes letters to Theo, leaving them in specific places where she knows he might find them. Historic spots in the city, objects left in the same building where she discovered the diary. She addresses him with familiarity, narrating details of her present and sharing her thoughts, desires, and doubts about this impossible connection. "It's as if you've always been here, Theo," she writes in one of the letters, which she carefully places behind an old mirror in the building. "Do I also appear in your dreams?" In 1950, Theo discovers one of these letters while restoring old furniture in the building where he works. As he reads Clara's words, he feels a strange intimacy, a warmth that makes him smile. He begins to respond, writing his own letters and hiding them in the same building. "Clara, your presence has been the light in my days. How can I explain something I cannot see but feel so close? I wonder, will we ever meet?" For him, each written word carries a weight of hope, of a love that seems to grow inevitably. As days go by, Clara feels that she is falling in love with Theo, with this distant soul who inhabits her thoughts like a promise. She loses herself in the pages of the diary and in the letters he writes, getting to know every detail, every nuance of Theo's feelings. And he, in turn, feels the same. In Clara's letters, he finds the understanding and affection he has always sought, as if she were a part of him that had been waiting to be found. These secret messages become the anchor for both in their daily routines, a love that strengthens with each word and begins to manifest in their dreams. In her nights, Clara sees Theo, and he sees her too, in a dreamlike space where time bends and the impossible happens. Each time they close their eyes, it's as if they are together in a place outside of time, experiencing stolen moments, shared smiles, and the warmth of a touch they can never feel upon waking. As time goes on, Clara and Theo feel that reality is becoming a shadow of what truly matters. Both are increasingly absorbed by this invisible and inexplicable connection. Clara, in her present, finds herself distant from those around her, lost in thoughts about someone who, theoretically, belongs to the past. She begins to question her own sanity. She talks to friends, hesitating to reveal what is really happening. And when she mentions something, she feels that no one understands her. "You live in your stories," they say. "It's just a fantasy." But for Clara, the feeling is undeniably real, and doubt begins to weigh heavily on her. Theo, in his time, faces similar conflicts. His days, once marked by routine, are now filled with an inexplicable longing, a desire to be with someone he has never met but knows as intimately as himself. He tries, in vain, to focus on his work and responsibilities, but his mind always drifts back to the letters, to the dreams where Clara seems as real as anyone else in his life. In one of those dreams, Theo sees her in a field, smiling at him. He tries to approach, but she always drifts away, disappearing like a shadow at dawn. Determined to understand what is happening, Clara decides to study Theo's notes in his diary and find a connection to the history of the city. One quiet night, she uncovers a mysterious event involving the building where she found the diary. A tragedy that happened decades earlier, a fire in which Theo was reported missing. The revelation leaves her shaken. She realizes that Theo's past holds a dark secret, something he may not even be aware of. How could he be writing to her, living in 1950, when he apparently disappeared in a fire shortly after? This discovery brings a new urgency. Clara understands that to reach Theo, she must unravel the mystery surrounding his disappearance and somehow warn him of the impending danger. But how does one communicate with someone who does not know what awaits them? How can one change a fate that is already written? Theo's thoughts turn dark as well, as if he senses something. In his letters, His words take on a tone of farewell, and Clara reads each line with a heavy heart. Even without fully comprehending, she feels that their time together, however surreal, may be coming to an end. At this point, the reality for both is clear. They must fight against fate itself if they want a chance to meet. For that, Clara will have to do the impossible: challenge the past to save Theo. Clara spends sleepless nights studying the details of the fire and the building where she found Theo's diary, convinced that there lies the key to understanding what really happened. Among old newspaper records and historical documents, she discovers crucial information. The fire that took Theo's life was not an ordinary accident. Witnesses at the time mentioned strange sounds, like whispers, and claimed that Theo was murmuring someone's name before disappearing into the flames. It was as if he were in another place, conversing with an invisible presence. The pieces begin to fall into place. Clara realizes that, somehow, she is the cause or the reason for her connection with Theo, and perhaps even for his disappearance. With a sense of urgency, she returns to the old building, this time determined to search for any physical remnants of Theo, any sign that could make their connection even stronger. Upon arriving, Clara discovers a hidden room in the basement, which, inexplicably, seems to have been preserved since the 1950s. The dust, the objects, everything there seems frozen in time, like a capsule where the past and present intertwine. In the center of the room, Clara finds an antique mirror and a letter addressed to her. Clara begins Theo's letter. "If you are reading this, it means there is still hope. I don't know how to explain, but I feel we are connected in a way that defies everything I know. If you truly exist, then don't let time keep us apart. I will be waiting no matter how long it takes." The words are like a breath of life for Clara, confirming that Theo believes in her. And with each line she reads, her determination grows. In a surge of impulse, she touches the mirror and feels a slight cold current at her fingertips, as if an invisible barrier lies between her and something unknown. The touch leads her to have a vision of Theo at the exact moment the fire occurred. She sees him struggling to escape the flames, calling for her, but trapped, as if he were in another reality. The mirror seems to be a door between them, a point of contact where the two times meet, yet at the same time separate them. Now, Clara understands the risk. By trying to cross this temporal barrier, she could lose everything. However, her love for Theo leads her to a dangerous decision. She resolves to return to the mirror with items that connect both times, objects he knows that could perhaps serve as anchors to draw Theo to the present. With each attempt, Clara feels she is closer to breaking the barrier between them, but she also realizes that each attempt weakens the connection, making it more unstable. That night, as she closes her eyes, Clara senses Theo's presence like never before, almost as if he is by her side, calling her name. She responds, knowing he probably won't hear her, but still, her words cross the void. "Theo, please hold on. I'm almost there." For Clara, the danger of losing everything is worth it if it means a chance to bring Theo into her present. However, time begins to show signs of resistance, as if it is about to reclaim its dominance, making a dark truth clear. The crossing is perilous, and time demands a price from those who dare challenge its rules. Clara returns to the building with fierce determination, carrying objects that connect her to Theo. The diary, the letters he wrote, and even the dried flower she mysteriously found in her notebook days before. Each object seems to pulse with its own energy, as if they hold fragments of the moments they shared. In front of the mirror, Clara feels an immense emotional weight. She knows that what she is about to do could be definitive, a last attempt to cross over and perhaps change the past. As she concentrates on the mirror, her thoughts become more intense, fixated on the image of Theo that she visualizes in her dreams. She closes her eyes and repeats his name like a mantra, as if she could, by the force of will, summon his presence to her side. On the other side of time, Theo feels a similar energy. In a dream, he sees Clara more vividly than ever, reaching out to him. He wants to reach out, but something holds him back, a force invisible and oppressive that binds him to his time. Clara, desperate to break this barrier, leans the diary against the mirror, hoping that the object, filled with Theo's words and feelings, can open a crack between the times. The mirror reacts, trembling slightly as if it were alive. Suddenly, a faint light begins to emanate from its surface, projecting Theo's image into the room, close to her. He looks confused, his eyes fixed on Clara as if he were seeing a ghost. "Clara?" he whispers, his voice almost inaudible. She tries to respond, but the words get lost in the space between them. They both reach out their hands, and as they touch the surface of the mirror, the barrier finally gives way. They feel each other's touch for the first time, and an electric current passes between their hands. However, the mirror begins to crack around them, as if time itself were protesting against the merging of the two worlds. Theo starts to be pulled back, his image fading as the mirror seems to resist the connection. Desperate, Clara realizes that time demands a sacrifice. To keep him with her, she will have to give up something important, an essential part of herself, perhaps even her own freedom. In that moment, a silent understanding establishes itself between them. She will have to remain trapped in Theo's time, or he will disappear forever. Without hesitation, Clara moves closer to the mirror, feeling the weight of the decision, and, in one last breath, she crosses the barrier. The moment is brief but eternal. The space around them seems to freeze, as if time were holding its breath. She looks at Theo, now right in front of her, finally real, and he wraps her in his arms. For a brief moment, they both feel the fullness of their meeting, but soon realize that the connection came at a price. As the room disintegrates around them, the mirror cracks completely, ending what seemed to be a last chance. When the mirror finally breaks, Clara and Theo find themselves in a place that belongs to neither her present nor his past. They are in a kind of limbo, where time seems suspended, frozen in a surreal moment of calm. Around them, the shadows of old objects blend with echoes of sounds from the present, as if both times were, for a brief moment, overlapping. Clara feels her whole body vibrating, as if she is between two worlds, and the same seems to happen with Theo, who looks at her with a mix of love and sadness. They both know, without needing to say it, that the sacrifice they made was not enough to keep them together in the way they had hoped. They are together, but this closeness is unstable, ephemeral, and each second they spend together makes the reality around them crumble a little more. Theo takes her hands and pulls her closer, looking at her as if trying to memorize every detail of her face, knowing their time is short. "I've waited for you my whole life, Clara," he says, his voice trembling. "Even without knowing, I knew you existed, that you were the missing person in my life." Clara smiles sadly, feeling the same tightness in her chest, but knows they are reaching the limit of what time allows. They realize that the only way to make this connection last is to transform it into a memory, an echo in time that will exist between them forever. Theo understands that from that moment on, the only way for them to continue living, even if separately, is to accept that this connection is stronger than time itself and that, in some way, they will always be present in each other's lives. Clara feels the weight of the farewell, but a comforting warmth fills her chest. She knows that, no matter where she is, Theo's soul will always be connected to hers. "One day, in some time, we will meet again," she murmurs, as if carving this promise into eternity. Theo nods, his gaze firm. "And when that happens, all the time in the world will be ours." With those words, the room around them begins to fade, and Clara feels a lightness that transports her back to the present. She wakes up in the abandoned building, alone, with Theo's diary by her side. But now, there is a difference. The final pages of the diary have been filled with the last words he wrote to her, words she has never read before, but which seem laden with the love and connection they shared. "Until we meet again, Clara," she reads the last line, written in a handwriting as familiar to her as her own name. Back in her time, Clara keeps the diary as a promise and finds solace in the idea that, somehow, their story still lives on, like an invisible thread connecting both times. In every corner, every old object she encounters, she feels Theo's presence, as if he is always by her side, like a reflection that emerges in moments of silence and calm. And even though they are not physically together, She knows that this love, strong enough to challenge time itself, will survive. If this story touched you and made you think about the strength of love that transcends time, subscribe to the channel to continue exploring feelings and mysteries like this. Here, every story is an invitation to reflect, feel, and get lost in narratives that go beyond the ordinary. Leave your like and activate the bell, and together, let's travel into new dimensions of emotion and mystery.